Hey Brandon, it's Mrs. Wallace. I'm just going to give you a short video that kind of emphasizes some of the key points that we looked at today in class. Just know you have an assignment due on Monday about behavioral economics, and it's kind of focusing on one small piece of what's a very, very big topic. Even in class today, we only scratched the surface of just introducing behavioral economics. But a couple of questions that we're interested in is, what are some of the reasons why people might make decisions in a way and behave, irrationally? It's kind of the way we could say, on one hand, the utility theory gives us all this good information about how we make decisions and how we consume things and what types of decision making we do, and how we monitor our own behavior. All of those different things are things that maybe the utility theory can help us with, but it also assumes a lot. It assumes that we know our preferences. It assumes that we know our utility and kind of what happens as we continually consume and whatnot. And even though it generally is like a tried and true theory, we know that there are lots of times where either we have kind of cognitive biases built into our brains, where we act kind of irrationally in making a decision. There's also, of course, a great deal of ways that decisions for us can be framed, and we can be manipulated into making one decision over another depending on how information might connect to us. And there's a whole set of reasons why that's the case. So we want to get into behavioral economics. It's kind of a maybe a discipline blend between economics and psychology. Quite a few of the people involved in behavioral economics might be psychologists, but economists are also interested in creating, for example, some new utility functions that include some of the elements of behavioral economics. So that's kind of where this fits for us. What are some of the reasons for irrationality according to psychologists? So what types of cognitive biases might we talk about? And there's just so many. And then also, how does behavioral economics differ from neoclassical economics? Neoclassical economics, the type of the school of economics that we're really studying in our course this year, really based on kind of market of supply and demand, and certain assumptions. But neoclassical economics, assumes that, economic man is very, very rational, is engaging in decisions with the sole purpose of increasing utility and knows how to do that. Of course, again, we are not always operating that way. And then when we talk about, what are some of the goals of behavioral economics or how might we use it, this is where it gets kind of interesting because there's a great deal of ways that it gets used, certainly at the firm level. So for years, advertisers and marketers have been very well aware of consumer, psychology, and they've played, to this in advertisements or whatever. So we certainly know that how things are framed or in what ways people might make decisions. There's a long kind of study of that. So certainly firms might use behavioral economics. One example that I read about the other day is Uber, for example, has hired a good number of behavioral economists, and they're interested in studying how workers who drive for Uber behave. And so one particular issue that Uber has is they're trying to keep their drivers, in the car for as long as possible, especially in places where drivers don't frequently go, and also at hours where drivers are not as frequent. And so from the perspective of the driver, lots of times what they might do is they might drive for a certain number of hours during the day, and then when they hit a certain amount of money or they hit a number of hours, they completely sign off. So Uber is interested in trying to figure out ways that they can entice drivers to stick around beyond either a certain number of hours or beyond when people kind of create their goal. So, a whole bunch of policies that kind of enable drivers to stick around. The next, kind of assignment, could pop up, in the middle of the old one, and, it could be for a certain amount of money at a certain point in the day. There's like incentives built in to kind of keep drivers around, and that's how a firm might use some of the study of behavioral economics. There's also a great amount of work at the UN level. There's a whole department of behavioral economics, believe it or not, at the UN, and they are very, very interested in kind of working on things like helping people in developing countries save money. One of the ways that people can be incentivized to save money, might establish like by making it very easy and by kind of enabling people to do it in a certain way. That's something something that the UN is interested in. Even when it comes to really big problems to solve, like climate change, there's a strong belief that behavioral economics will become very useful in enabling people to make the right choices and do the right thing in the name of the environment. Sometimes before social norms start to change and social change happens, there might be ways that we can nudge people to make a certain decision. So there's like a role, in a sense, for behavioral economics at the government level. And in some ways that can be, that can bring out a whole bunch of issues, right? So sometimes some people will say, it's a great idea for, say, the country of Great Britain to have a behavioral economics department, because they can have all kinds of policies that are affected by behavioral economics, and maybe this gets people to, maybe not use such a heavy fuel vehicle, or gets people to behave in a certain way. You could certainly argue that maybe the government shouldn't have that degree of power, over its people, and perhaps that could be dangerous. So depending on the purpose and what it's used for, there's all kinds of questions of what's called paternalism. But in any case, behavioral economics fits into public policy. It also fits into a lot of firms, and it's kind of an interesting field. So I have a definition up here. You really don't have to worry about writing down this definition, but we're looking to explain and predict behavior. We're writing policy prescriptions in a lot of cases, and we are maybe taking some of the traditional economic assumptions and we're matching it with psychology. Something that we looked at in class, and this is where I'm going to refer you to a video clip. Okay, so you're going to turn off this one, and I'm going to leave you with the first video. The work of Daniel Kahneman is probably some of the foundation work in economics for behavioral economics. His most recent work that was written in 2011, I think, he's an Israeli psychologist. Okay, so his background is not economics. Despite that, he won the Nobel Prize in economics for some theories related to behavioral economics. But his most recent work is called Thinking Fast and Slow. And he articulates that as we learn, or as we are thinking, we use two kind of sections of our brain, right? So he's like boiling cognitive science down to these very simple images. System one is operating very, very quickly. It's almost like voluntary. It's like kind of making split-second decisions, really quick, rapid judgments, kind of the thing like somebody's walking down the street, okay, is what I know about them, just a quick thing. And then, of course, system two is like, now we're doing some really heavy type of thinking. I'm writing an essay. I've got, sources all in front of me, and I'm trying to figure some of that out. It's a slower type of thinking. It's actually much more effective type of thinking. And the type of thinking that you're doing when you make a decision, either system one or system two, can be very, different. System one is like that, you're driving home after school, and, it's like a no-brainer. You don't even have to think about it. You're just making the turns, and you're not really deciding things. You're just kind of on automatic pilot. System two is very, deep level thinking. Okay, the little quick video that's just going to be called video one. Take a look at that. It's a little fun, and it kind of gives you a sense of ways that we mess up when we use system one. System one, because we're using that to, cut down on our, brain power and our brain usage, right? Making it easier for ourselves. Ultimately, system one enables us sometimes to make some flawed decisions, right? We might believe things to be the case when they're absolutely not, okay? And of course, there's a whole bunch of different types of things with, behavioral economics. We know that we do tend to make decisions on past experience and past judgments. We're making quick judgments, so we get some cognitive biases and some, degree of heuristics. We're just shortcutting things. Are subject to cognitive biases. We use anchors. We fall into relativity traps, tend to weigh losses greater than gains, tend to bias to the default, may have self-control problems, procrastination, smoking, getting exercise. These are all topics that economists are interested in, because this is about decision making, good decisions over bad ones, and how can we try to make good decisions. So how do we use the psychology to help us do that? And in a lot of cases, there's a whole bunch of behavioral economics dedicated to things related to fairness. So if you watch that video and then kind of come back, some of the things that we talked about in terms of some of the biases that we oftentimes are not aware of, right? Or things that, in some cases, some firms will take advantage of because they know that we are very easily manipulated. I asked students to look at this ad. It's for Amazon Prime, of course. What might be something that you notice about this ad that gets you excited about it? All ads are designed to get you to buy stuff. Why does this one work? And so somebody said, well, look, it looks like the people, even though they're faceless, and even the cat, they're smiling, right? They look happy. So if I get Amazon Prime, I'm going to be happy too. And so we started talking about some of the language in this, cancel anytime, start your 30-day free trial, click that button, and all of this is kind of easy, and the user can just kind of to get this. But we also noted some of the subliminal messaging in this, that the logo for Amazon is essentially like a smile. So the box and the Amazon package looks also happy, and that it's so many places, within this ad. So it's on the bag, it's on this box, it's on this box, it's on the people, there's just like this constant image, and in a sense it's a way of anchoring us around that smile. So this is like a strategy, and a lot of times when we talk about cognitive biases, there's many of them, but in a lot of cases they are game for us to be taken advantage of. This is another example of something called framing. Economists are very interested in how your decisions are framed. One example of this might be when you go to the grocery store, right? And that Target has got, maybe this big, section on the side that just kind of says, $1, everything in this bin is $1. Stores are kind of physically designed to tap into the way in which you're going to make decisions, right? So you're going to choose this and this, and if, this is really close to the, exit, maybe you're going to pick up that Pepsi and the chocolate bar, on your way out, or whichever. Also, things in your own life in terms of public policy could be framed. I was telling students in class that one example might be when you go to get your driver's license, and you're asked whether or not you want to donate an organ, right? And it's kind of, you have to check off a box in order to decide to donate an organ. And if you decide to do that, then you're on a list and you become an organ donor. In some countries, that entire decision is framed very differently. You only check the box if you don't want to donate the organ. And it's kind of a classic economics example, because it tells us that depending on how the decision is framed, in some countries organ donation rate is actually much higher, and that's the case because it is framed a little bit differently. In the example that we're looking at, I think this was like Williams and Sonoma or something like that. They had some catalog, and they were interested in selling the $275 bread maker. So what they ultimately did is they had this other bread maker that really wasn't getting a whole lot of play. Nobody was really buying it, this really expensive bread maker, the $429. Nobody really wanted that. But they found that when they put the $429 bread maker next to the $275 bread maker, more people were buying the $275 bread maker. More people were actually buying bread makers. And so people kind of looked at the two of them and said, wow, I might not be the kind of person that's going to buy a $429 bread maker, but maybe I'm the kind of person that's going to buy the $275 bread maker. And the $429 bread maker didn't even exist. It was like whatever. But it is, a kind of they weren't really producing it anymore with an interest in selling it. I guess it existed, but it wasn't really kind of in the warehouse ready to go out. But it was kept in the catalog because it made a difference in the way people made their decisions. And there's a lot of language. If you go to the grocery store at some point and you see some of the language in the meat department, for example, it's always going to be represented like 80% lean or 90% lean, never like 10% fat or 20% fat, because the framing of that decision, changes everything, okay? And along with this, and there were a couple of other examples I'm going to kind of flip through just so I can note the last thing. Prospect theory is really Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky's very, very specific paper from 1979. This is maybe the start of behavioral economics, and in this theory that's known as prospect theory, basically this is very much The big takeaway is that people make decisions about a whole lot of things, not just about what they want to consume. Sometimes decision making is really hard. It's about challenging things too. And we want to be able to look at things. People tend to do that relative to the status quo. How good or bad a decision is depends on where I'm at. And people are also very loss adverse. Okay, loss adverse means we feel losses greater than gains. So if I asked you, to flip a coin to see if you wanted to make a bet where if you guessed, what the coin was, you would get $10, and if not, I would get $10 from you, you may not take that bet because you might be worried about losing your $10. Okay.